it's just the tip of the damn iceberg. This has been one of those weeks where it's been really rough. So I wanted to get a chance to preface before we get started all the hilarity and intelligence on the show, and that is because that along with everything else that's been terrible this last week, we lost an icon. This hat I'm wearing here says Tikkun Olam. That is a Israeli term for heal the world or repair the world. And one particular man, I believe, amplified that more than anybody else, and that was Raphael Meshulam. This is a guy from Bulgaria who migrated to Israel and started the entire cannabis research industry out that way. And he isolated THC. He discovered and proved the endocannabinoid system, and then one after one after one would reveal these other cannabinoids and relationships to terpenes and all the other things that we take for granted as being part of what we have in front of us. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have a program in the first place. Raphael passed away this last week at age 92. And because of his work, a lot of us will be able to hit that age and later. And with that, it's Sunday. It's been a lousy week. So the only way you could possibly survive it is by jumping into our rotation.
I clicked it. There we go.
Marijuana in my soul. Marijuana in my heart.
And it continues. It's just been one of those damn weeks where I'm sorry to all the atheists out there, but thank God that it's over.
I am so offended.
That is exactly why I said it.
You're just sticking the dagger in deeper and deeper with the atheist stuff.
Well, this last week was the beginning of the session, and of course we had to deal with our governor's state address, which basically said, "You will love our dear leader, and this is my little red book, and you're going to start reading it from it as quickly as possible." No, that's not true. That's not the book of ethics in Tallahassee. This is the book of ethics in Tallahassee. That's what it all comes down to. It's the golden rule.
That means money?
It means that he who has the money writes the bills, and he who has the power pushes them through if they got the money from somebody else to go ahead and do it. So it all comes down to the root of all evil being legislators.
Yeah.
And of course, at the beginning of the session, one of the first things that happens is all the bills that are there to distract you and away from all the good things could possibly happen start getting poured on your plate as everybody files in towards the end of the filing period. Now, we had a ton of good bills that we put out this last year.
A lot of good ones.
Absolutely. And so far, they are being absolutely considered. But the things that are being pushed through are the things that are coming through that are doing less to improve the program and more to disassemble it. And people don't see it straight out when they look at it the first time. If you start reading these bills for the intrinsic ideas behind them and what you can do when you combine several of them, you'll find out that there's a nefarious puzzle going on. I'm not saying I'm a conspiracy theorist because, well, I was at 9/11 and I know I didn't do it, okay? It was a rumor. It was a rumor that I called all the Jews in building 2 and told them all to escape, but that's not true.
I just love that Mike Thompson's just so uncomfortable right now. Hi, Mike.
And with that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest because I made him sweat for a while.
Yeah.
And first off, I am your political director for Suncoast Normal, Gary Stein, and the Master of Public Health. And to my far right, your far left, is our executive director, our deputy director.
Thank you.
Carlos Angel Hermida, who is also our Master of Business Administration. And boy, have I got some business questions for you today.
Oh, yeah?
And in between the two of us, because of the fact that
mom and pop business answers for you.
Our executive director and now current new member of the national board of Normal is not here because Benjamin Franklin stole an hour from him last night, and he didn't get it back.
He means daylight savings time.
So exactly right. That bastard
anybody's
Franklin.
Confused about the cryptic Gary talk.
A guy develops a system in the 1700s, and we haven't fixed it yet. It's almost like the Florida legislature when it comes to taking care of good things. But they'll get to it in good time as soon as they finish with all the culture wars. So we're going to deal with that. We're going to deal with the fact that we've got a ton of things to commiserate about. But we're also going to talk about some good things because there is so much good opportunity here in the state of Florida for entrepreneurs in the cannabis industry. Kind of.
Not
I mean,
really.
when it comes to the legal THC industry, we don't know if and when those licenses are going to come out. But if anybody really wants to be an entrepreneur in the system, they have to go with either ancillary services or be involved in the hemp field. And that hemp field, by the way, is the reason we have a cannabis business in the first place. Reason we have a cannabis industry. If it wasn't for the fact that Charlotte Wiggy was actually treated with CBD, we wouldn't be here today. And so that industry, the hemp industry, built first legally and then legally through the FDA and through the hemp bill, where it automatic, the Farm Bill of 2018, which made it legal. But that chance for entrepreneurs is on shaky ground today, and we're going to discuss the goods and the bads with our guest, Mike Thompson.
Hello, Florida.
Hi, Mike. What's up? It's Gary's got to work on like shortening the intros, but that's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Let's try and make him sweat.
So yeah, so from everything that Gary said, I mean, it's quite simple. There's some bills were introduced in the Florida Senate and the Florida House that would essentially eradicate the hemp industry, right? Like, I mean, like Mike, you kind of sent me the bills first, so like it would even like essentially get rid of like CBD gummies, right?
Yeah, it basically it redefines what a synthetic cannabinoid is. So what happens, if this bill were to go through, this is not a bill that you would want to amend. Like this is a bill that we would want either vetoed or not passed at all. Like it would be detrimental to the hemp industry
Yeah,
here in the state of Florida. So in 2000, a lot of people don't know, but in 2018, the 2018 Farm Bill was passed.
yeah,
And with the 2018 Farm Bill, what that did is that put a cap on the amount of THC that can be in an edible. So, for example, like a chocolate bar, like these are our chocolate bars, Danko Ganja chocolate bars. There's a federal limit that the max THC can be 0.3 percent THC per dry weight by volume. So that means
Dry weight by volume. What does that mean?
well, that means if you have a 50 gram bar or 50 gram bar, the maximum amount of THC that can be in this bar is 150 milligrams because you're weighing the whole thing. What this legislation does, specifically House Bill 1475 and Senate Bill 1676,
well,
it's
before you go on, Mike, I just want to point out that specifically, like between the two of us, I opened Chillum like in 2018, and there were even some times like you were like sending me texts where like I heard you were gonna get raided, bro. Like when this hemp bill passed, when the farm bill passed, right?
mhm.
This took a lot of gray area out of the industry. A lot of people like me that were sweating whether or not they were doing something illegal or something legal with CBD, because there was some gray area there with CBD and hemp, right? What that 2018 Farm Bill is, it took all the gray area out. As long as the parameters for the Delta 9 THC were that specifically where what you just said, the 0.3%, right? People who sold CBD knew that they were selling a legal product, that they were okay, that they were protected by federal law, and that everything was great, that they could have their business and compete in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And what happens, see here in Florida, um, you know, most people in Florida believe in true free market capitalism.
yeah.
Probably more so than most other states. The
Mhm.
citizens of Florida, it's a very red state here. With that being said, when it comes to cannabis, the structure is as if it's totalitarianism, right?
Mhm.
So you have a handful of licenses, 22 licenses, of which 11 firms are currently producing and selling. And what that's done is when you have a marketplace where there is a dam, if you will, for competition, what that does for these firms is their entire success is predicated on limited competition,
Yeah.
and that breeds inefficiency within the organization. It's not good for shareholders. It's not good for consumers, and it's not good for the citizens. And what's happened is
And
is
what you're saying is right now is just straight up business 101.
Absolutely.
Like this isn't any secret or anything like that. That's, if you don't have competition, right, you could care less about what you're doing, right?
What you
Right.
have is an oligopoly.
Yeah.
And we go back to the turn of the 20th century. We had robber barons that are essentially basically your millionaires and billionaires that had monopolies on each individual commodity and service in the United States. And those things were called trusts, and they were busted by the government. I think it was a Republican government too at the time. Teddy Roosevelt.
It's surprising the Republican concepts that are now not very Republican.
Well, let's put it this way. Yeah. So if this kit, some people are calling it the kill hemp bill. If this bill goes through, you have to remember, Ron DeSantis has run on being a anti-rhino Republican. He has run on the fact that he claims that he says, look, I'm here to drain the swamp. So Ron DeSantis has an opportunity. If this bill gets to his desk, it could kill as much of at least 100,000 jobs, have billions of dollars in effect to our hemp industry, and it would essentially hand over this entire industry over to the cartels and what some Republicans would call woke monopolies, right? Which is interesting because Florida is where woke comes to die, they say, right?
Gary says that all the time.
I say it all the time. I say it in my sleep.
Yet
my cats are starting to attack me.
Yeah, and the thing is that these state sanctioned monopolies are some of the most woke companies. And what I don't understand is if DeSantis is against woke, why is he protecting these? Why is he protecting these state sanctioned monopolies?
To get into what these bills actually do. So, like we've said that these bills will kill the hemp industry. How do these bills kill the hemp industry?
Basically, like our entire manufacturing company would be out of business. The reason why hemp has exploded was because of the limited competition available, like in the cannabis industry. A lot of people who've been arrested, who have been incarcerated, who've been treated like a violent criminal and thrown in a cage. These are the people that pave the way so these big companies can come in here, entrepreneurs can come in and have a really good, take advantage of that, right?
Right.
And they were kind of kept out. They were out of the club. And as a result, through the 2018 Farm Bill that President Trump actually signed, a lot of people don't realize that. As Nikki Fried said, it essentially legalized cannabis. You have some retailers that sell hemp THC bud that has less than 0.3% THC Delta 9 in there. Now that's like pushing it on the gray area, but I say, you know what? That's what you get when you try to create a limited marketplace.
Well,
right?
Let's people understand that the THCA is the acid form of THC, which is inactive euphorically. So basically, it has to be heated or oxidized through some kind of acid process to become active, or delta THC, delta 8 THC, delta 10 THC.
Just to get into what you're talking about here, Mike, it's essentially what you're saying is because there is limited competition in the cannabis industry to sell weed legally in Florida. Right, it's almost impossible. There's no way. I aspire to do it, but
I go with aspire
to do it, and but it's nearly impossible for me. I'm a small business owner. I've got one store, a couple websites that pumps some revenue through, but I can't afford the cost for a license here, and not even to mention that. Essentially, no licenses have really been distributed since the amendment actually passed, right? They're all licenses that were grandfathered in, essentially.
They actually were those licenses we have right now, those 15 active, actually almost 16 active licenses right now, were really given out to the losers of the first round in 2015 prior to Amendment 2 actually being invoked.
And the ancillary company that I was involved in back then was called Florida Cannabis Coalition. We fancied ourselves as a bit of consultants for the Florida cannabis industry.
I saw you. You looked very fancy.
And I'll tell you this. That's one thing that we did. If you want to get into cannabis in Florida, you might as well get into the hemp industry because it's almost impossible to do that.
But if that industry is gone too, then that's one more piece of the puzzle of anti-competition that is we're going to see coming from our current government now, unless they fix the situation before it goes bad, right?
The entire hemp industry will be handed over to a handful of select monopolistic companies and the drug cartels. You're
Well,
talking billions of dollars completely wiped away from Florida families. Tens of thousands Floridian families will be decimated. You got to remember, there's over 7,000 hemp licenses in the state of Florida, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
with those 7,000, how many
Cultivation, yeah.
jobs
That
are attached to each one of those
that's
licenses?
7,000.
And that's just cultivation, guys. That's not even processing
So
and retail sales like we have here.
to answer your question, as far as my business is concerned, I got 8 employees here. So 7,000 times 8, I guess, would be the best way to find that figure right now. But either way, 7,000 businesses in total. That's incredibly harmful to our economy.
Absolutely. And not only these licenses, but you have
Yeah.
to look at the ancillary companies as well, the marketing firms, the packaging firms, the distribution. In fact, we have a relationship with the United States Postal Service where we're completely transparent.
Yeah.
And they've given us the green light to distribute our products throughout the United States. So be it that each product has less than 0.3% THC. So I'll give you an example. So what's happening right now, and this is why the big cannabis companies are funding this legislation to kill this industry on the hemp side, is because you don't need a card anymore. You can walk into Chillum right here in downtown Ybor.
At
with
1714 East Ybor Avenue in Ybor City, where it all began.
That's right, and this is the only place in Ybor where you can pick up the most delicious Belgian dankalicious chocolate. Shameless plug. But and you don't need a card, and it's dispensary grade, and it tastes
Soon available online.
I love the name, by the way. It's the Dank of Ganja.
Dank of Ganja. That's right, and it's most people say it's more delicious than what's in the big dispensaries. There's not any, in those manufacturing facilities, they don't have passion. You've seen the same thing happen in the beer industry, right? So you had Budweiser, Coors, Michelob. For years, these were just the main beer manufacturers. You couldn't even get a license to start your own brewery, or there was a big moat around these businesses. And then in Portland, the microbrewery explosion happened, and you've seen further consolidation, and you have all kinds of flavors of beer now. Well, we're seeing. I'm hopeful that we'll see the same thing happen in the cannabis industry. Governor DeSantis has a chance with a stroke of a pen to save over 100,000 jobs in a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I'm hopeful that he can actually do it. He has presidential aspirations, so I don't think that he would want to be a presidential candidate that says, "Hey, I'm here to kill a multi-billion-dollar federally legal industry and hand it over to a corporate monopoly." That's not very, that's not going to help him in the primaries much, especially considering all of the veteran-owned businesses in the hemp industry. It's insane.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to point out that we don't really know what's going on right now. We have these bills out. There's suspicions and whatnot, and we're trying to assess the situation.
Now,
But
the
I've
mainstream
heard-
media, when they've been covering this bill, they have not been covering it right. And I can't help but want to call out the fact that if you just look at the headline and it says this bill only treats hemp as a food to be consumed and therefore under the
now
guards of the Department of Agriculture,
Whole-
that is not nearly a full summary of the bill.
I understand you're upset about being the headline, but
I am highly
one
impressed.
thing that I'm really concerned about, though, Gary, is the rumor that I heard that DeSantis actually wants to sign this bill.
Yeah, I have heard that too. But then again, he also wanted to go ahead and destroy the second biggest employer in the state, which is Disney, of course, and knock it down by putting in cronies who might just make that whole business kind of crumble. I don't think that's free market.
Well, to be fair, there was a piece of legislation that came on DeSantis's desk that eventually that virtually made all the vapor flavors illegal, and he vetoed it.
Yeah,
he went against the swamp, and he vetoed it. So it's definitely within the realm of possibilities that DeSantis can go against the swamp and stick to his own principles and veto this legislation or not pass it. So that is within the realm of possibilities.
Now, if you look at Florida legislation, you have to follow the money, because that often tells you not only who started these bills, but who got them to be pushed all the way through. Like, for instance, all of a sudden, after getting a ton of money for his election for Ron DeSantis to get into office. All of a sudden, he says, "Stop that case against the making smoking flower illegal, and let's go ahead and have smokable cannabis." Amazing.
Well, when he
Since that time, everything else has been negative.
Well, when he first came into office, the first thing he had a press conference with John Morgan
Matt Gaetz.
and
Matt
Representative Matt
Gaetz.
Gaetz, and one of the first things he said, we got to stop this smoking ban and this monopoly cartel of cannabis companies. We have to break them up. I don't think we should break them up. I think they should be able to compete with everyone else, both vertical and horizontal licenses.
As long as they are competing in a proper manner.
I think it would be good for them. It would be good for the investors. It would be good for the businesses. Because let me just give you an example. If you're growing a cannabis plant and you don't have any wind and you don't have any stress on that plant, it's going to be very, very weak, right? And the same is with business. If you have a business that's protecting, let's say the wind is the competition, and you're not letting any wind go on that plant, you're doing that plant a disservice because it can't deal with the stresses. So what happens is when you have a company that grows and hasn't had any of those stress fractures from competition, it becomes either too big to fail, or the economic ramifications of the fallout from that company could be tremendous. One thing you guys got to realize: Friday, with the Silicon Valley Bank that just collapsed, and the FDIC.
I don't get that. 2 days for an entire bank to collapse.
This is where this is important. That bank collapsed, right? The contagion from that bank, because the FDIC insures, so each depositor, their max insurance is $250,000. And I'm going to get to how this affects the cannabis industry. There's banks like Lafayette State Bank. There's other small regional banks here in the state of Florida. If that contagion spreads to those cannabis banks with these firms that have money in those banks, the effects could be detrimental. And do you think the federal government right now is in a position with inflation to be able to come in and save these banks and these cannabis firms?
Right.
So this could spread, and how does a cannabis firm go through bankruptcy court? It's never happened. So I think we could see blood on Monday, tomorrow.
I already see blood in the water.
Tomorrow? What do you
I
mean?
see blood in the water. You know what that means?
Tomorrow?
Well, the market's going to open, and we might see some carnage, because I don't think the market's priced in the risk to these publicly traded cannabis firms that have money in these small regional charter banks, because they're more susceptible to the contagion from the collapse of one bank. Because what we're hearing about now, is we're seeing, as the interest rates rise, we're seeing who doesn't have pants on. Yeah. We're even seeing in cannabis companies who doesn't know how to market cannabis, who isn't really good.
We're not talking about that last Zoom meeting we had, right? I'm just asking. All right, go ahead.
But no, my point is that you're going to see.
I had to leave the room for a second.
Yeah, it could potentially be detrimental. Yeah. And a lot of these companies, they're quarter after quarter, they're missing earnings, and they don't even have any earnings. They're not profitable. And a lot of that has to do with the competition, with mom and pops of brands that are, how many brands do you have here in your store?
Shit. I don't even know.
Now, you ever go to a retail establishment, say for instance in Michigan?
Got to be about 20, 30 SKUs for hemp.
And if you go to some of the provisionaries in Michigan, or in some of the other retail stores in other states like Colorado and California, you will see hundreds of brands under the same roof. Whereas here in Florida, we have to have vertical. So basically, they can contract a brand, and occasionally they will kill it, kind of like these guys in VitaCan. We're not going to get into that. That's another story altogether.
So
the fact is, we have very few brands, and therefore we have very anti-competitive practices. Now, when you're in a free market, you can do one of two things to rise to the top. Either you can knock somebody else down, or you can make your product better than everybody else's
at a better price.
At a better price, because if you create a better product that has more sales, your sales increase, and therefore your prices don't have to. Nor if you get the bottom line profit to your stockholders or yourself if you're a personal business. Now, I'm not an economist. That is more you guys' venue, because Carlos is the Masters of Business Administration, and you have all your expertise in micro, macro economics and marketing. But isn't it true that if you strive for excellence, isn't that what the free market is supposed to make rise to the top and have all the bad guys fall to the back.
The free market rewards the best quality products at the lowest price. Everybody wins.
So if you push a mediocre product, but you still continue to grow, is that sustainable?
No, absolutely not. It's only sustainable if the government, who has a monopoly on violence, protects that. So you have a firm that.
Are we talking the industrial defense industrial complex?
No, I'm talking just general, like the government in general has a monopoly on violence, right? So that's why we
you know, I just want to like it sounds like from what we're saying here, you know, there's a lot of cryptic ways of saying that these hemp bills are proposed by the MMTCs, right?
What's an MMTC?
Medical Marijuana Treatment Center,
also known as MSO, multi-state operator.
Multi-state
If
operator.
they're multi-state, we do have
Specifically
MMTCs here in this
Florida,
state that are not MSOs.
Well, a lot of the big ones in this state are.
That's true because
multi-state
licenses were
operated.
sold to people who already had licenses in other states.
Now,
Weed companies.
Now, not to get too far into MSOs and MMTCs, but it sounds like the people that have this oligopoly on the cannabis industry here.
That is what we have. Otherwise,
let's just be real. That's what we're like alluding to through this entire conversation.
Yeah.
Right. I think one good representation of that fact, I think that hemp has been outlawed in something like 13 states, something like that. Right. And it always seems to be these states that have the cannabis industry legalized. Right. And it just seems that these cannabis companies that are really find this to be a major threat.
And if you follow the money, you find out where those bills came from to make those particular markets fail in those particular states. You will notice that if a company wants to be non-competitive, they will find a way to take out the competition as opposed to pull themselves up. And that is the kind of thing we have to fight against. And I got to tell you, I started this whole thing to make sure that people had access to medicine. That was my basic thrust. I didn't see this corporate tsunami coming up behind me, getting ready to wipe us all to hell.
Yeah, right.
But we do that. But as long as there are good players, then the industry can move forward. And we have to make certain that the free market knocks down those who don't. And that includes those who do non-competitive practices because they're not doing themselves or anybody else any benefit.
They shouldn't break up the cannabis companies. I don't think that's a good idea. I think in a free market, small operators and larger operators can complement each other. And they can both make more money, and the consumers can have better quality products at better prices, right?
Absolutely.
So do you guys know who the biggest competition is to the cannabis dispensaries here in the state of Florida?
Bud.
Two industries, right? You have the hemp industry, a lot of edibles.
Industry, okay, yeah.
Right? THCA flower.
Mhm.
And then probably the biggest competitor where they're losing revenue to is the traditional market. That hands down the biggest competitor.
Traditional market, aka legacy market, aka gray market, aka black market, depending on who you talk to.
You could say that. Let's call, let's say this year's projected to do about $3 billion in revenue in the state of Florida between all legal cannabis sales.
And that's conservative.
Right. $3 billion, of which I would argue that the hemp industry is probably at or around that same figure. So this industry, so that the economic ramifications of this would be absolutely detrimental. I have wishful thinking. I think this is an opportunity for the governor to show that he's not beholden to the swamp, if you will, and he has an opportunity to veto this and not sign it. It probably will pass both chambers, but in the event it does, it's going to be on his desk, and he can be the hero and say, "This is not the Florida that I stand for. This is not the freedom state. We're not going to sign this. We're not going to hand this over to these corporate monopolies. I'm not going to sign this." And let me be honest, he's done this before, so it's within the realm of possibilities, right? So you have to realize that he's a populist. He's not, he has a chance. Could he be a rhino and the uniparty and just do whatever the swamp tells him? Yeah, but this is an opportunity where he doesn't have to do that.
But let's take into a factor that he is trying to run for president, and that is a very expensive proposal. He's going to need as much money as possible in his campaign coffers. And so he could possibly be influenced by people who give him mega bucks within PACs and dark money to move his campaign forward. And if a company that is making a ton of money in Florida or in other states in regards to growing, dispensing cannabis, and they have quite a couple of extra $1 billion to spend on lobbying, they could potentially tilt the wheel, so to speak, in their favor by getting rid of the gray market or the legal market in hemp products, which normally have been stable up until this point in time, but they could easily be unstabilized by this bill right here.
Here's the thing, Gary. You said making a tons of money. Some of these companies have hundreds of millions, if not billions, in revenue.
Yeah.
But they don't have any earnings. They're not making money. They're losing money. They're losing money like crazy, and they're desperate. If they don't kill this bill, then their businesses could be doomed. If the contagion from the banking crisis doesn't get to them, then this could. And that's the beauty of the free market. I don't think that businesses should go out of business. I think bad businesses should go out of business. I think when you have the Federal Reserve artificially keep interest rates low, that causes more dollars to chase the same amount of goods, and then it causes more problems with homeowner accessibility and right. So a home that might have been 200,000 is now 350,000 because everybody can get a mortgage at a low price. Well, the same principles apply in our industry as well. So if we just let Mother Nature take its course, everybody wins.
Now, I know you're not a big fan of Nikki Fried, but she did some amazing things to open up the hemp market here in the state of Florida. And in fact, it was her leadership that got us to the point where we took whatever we could get from that
Nikki's
farm
cool.
bill.
I don't have anything against her.
And we have, like you said, 7,000 cultivation licenses out there. In regards to this bill is concerned, she did write me the other day and said they should know better than just, that was
Sorry,
food stuff.
guys, we're frozen. Shit.
That we're talking about something they don't want us to talk about.
I know who did that.
I don't know why we're frozen. Still connected and everything. Yeah. Okay, we're back.
Cool. Now we're back.
Awesome.
Okay. Sorry, we were redacted for a second there. Somebody came by.
I'm getting a ticket. Watch this. I'm getting a ticket.
They're even we were on before.
Yeah, I'm getting a ticket. Here's the thing. When it comes to tickets, I did the math, and the time it takes for you to go to the machine and fumble with your wallet and wait in line and pay, if you take all that time and then you divide it and versus how much I'm going to get a ticket right now, it's actually cheaper just to get a ticket.
Well, but you got your parking app right there, right? So you can do that.
No, I don't do that. I just pay the tickets.
Oh, I don't pay the tickets at all. I'm a scofflaw.
Yeah, got to pay your tickets, got to pay your taxes.
Absolutely. Otherwise, I'll get arrested and spend the rest of your.
Hang on, watch this. I'm going to tell him, please don't give me a ticket. He'll get a kick out of it. Watch this.
Anyways, so we have this bill that is being misrepresented in the press as being much less than it actually is. And if we go over certain things in the bill, I can tell you exactly why. Like, for instance, one of the things that it does is it redefines what is synthetic cannabis. Now, synthetic cannabis was a term that was thrown around when we had that K2 crisis. And that stuff was nasty. Chemicals made in my bathtub and thrown on weeds and put into little baggies with Scooby-Doo on them. Kind of dangerous. And there are quite a few people who got hurt by that because there was no regulation to the industry from the very beginning. That is not necessarily the case with this industry. There's a ton of at least self-regulation to most of the products that are out there, and every product that's in Chillum. There are a lot of people who really care deeply about the quality of their product. Now, that said, there are a ton of retailers out there who get stuff from wholesalers and from white labelers who don't know exactly what they're buying and don't have a way to pay for labs to go ahead and check every single product out before it hits their shelves. What is the actual cost that you think of a full examination of a product that includes not only all the cannabinoids and terpenes, but also the heavy metals?
You're looking at anywhere from like
300.
$200 to $300
Yeah.
It's closer to 700.
per
Oh
SKU.
wow.
Really? I don't think so. That's not what we pay.
Last I checked, it was 300. I guess inflation's been
Is
hitting
that
those testing labs hard.
are you including insecticides, pesticides, and heavy metals? Because that
Yes.
Like 350, 300.
Okay.
Yeah,
SKU.
the just cannabinoids.
It's still a buttload of
is
cash.
like $80.
I think they should also test for heavy metals at the state level.
I can't spend $300 for each one of my products.
Now,
Like,
what
I'll tell you
could
that.
happen is if you really wanted to regulate this industry, you don't go after the retailers. You find out who all the wholesalers were and the white labels are, and go back to the manufacturer who's creating the bad product, eliminate them,
Well-
and so that the retailers don't have to look over their shoulder every time they get a wholesale batch that they might have something that would be bad for their customers.
Well, these bills are essentially doing the opposite because I mean,
Exactly.
honestly, it's not going to keep. It'll stop retailers here in Florida, yeah, but you know, a lot of people are still going to get their hemp because they're going to order it from outside of the state online.
Now there are products out there, including your fantastic chocolate, that is
Products
available-
not regulated by the Florida Department of Agriculture.
no, because the fact we're talking about hemp-derived cannabinoids. Now, this is not synthetic in regards to the fact that it was made from chemicals in somebody's backyard in a big pot, like that kind of thing, or in the bathtub. These are actually cannabinoids that actually do exist in the plant,
Yeah,
and that were augmented by an acid wash that when they extract it and increase the concentration and put it back into the flour or any other thing, that's how you get that product. And again, where it's very specific as to why normally you could not get Delta 9 from the regular hemp, the regular cannabis, into an edible, because you had to have it as an extract oil. Here you're using a product which is coming out at 0.3%. So to increasing the weight of the product, you get it down to 0.3, correct?
That's right. And the biggest difference, the biggest definition between hemp and cannabis, who defines the difference? What is the difference between the two? The difference is the government. The government is what determines what the difference is. Hemp is less than 0.3% THC Delta 9, and cannabis is more than that. So I'll give you an example. If you're using hemp SOPs for testing, right, your hemp standard operating procedures for testing, you want the lowest Delta 9 percentage as possible, right? When you're testing cannabis, you want the highest cannabis test score as possible. And that's something else that we might want to talk about is lab shopping. It's an issue that's happening across the country. It's an issue that's happening here in Florida, where firms will go to a company and they'll get their THC results and they'll just say, those aren't working for us.
Yeah.
And they'll shop around. So there is no regulatory body to keep the labs in check. So we're seeing this across the country, a lot of THC fraud, THC inflation, if you will.
Yeah.
And consumers who, me personally, I'm a terp guy, right? And you actually taught me all about terps like over 10 years ago. The thing with terpenes is it's kind of like the driver, and that affects the flavor.
I did teach you about terps.
You did, yeah. And that affects, are you a slow, torquey kind of in the couch kind of guy? Or are you super productive, like as if you're taking Adderall or Provisional, just like knocking things out, getting things done? And as consumers become more educated, I think that THC will be less relevant, but still important. Most companies, most consumers still shop solely based on THC.
Yeah, it's all based off of that.
But the value comes in, the quality of the flower. What process was it used? I think consumers want to know, was it sun grown, LED grown?
It goes into what you're talking about. There's a certain type of consumer that really wants to know. Like there's a certain type of consumer that wants quality products. And they would get that from an unregulated industry.
Now let's talk about a similar industry, like the beer industry. In Ohio, especially when I was young, the limit you could buy was what they call 3.2 beer, which is 2 to 3% alcohol or 4 to 6 proof. Now, of course, it was legal to buy and you could buy it, but it was shit. But so if you wanted a better than 3.2 beer, you hauled your ass out of Ohio and you went to Michigan. Forget Indiana. That wasn't no fun. or Kentucky, which was also a dry state, but for some odd reason you could get some decent beer. And that was just the way the things were. It was only the federal regulation that made the difference between whether you were able to buy a product was of any value or whether it was crap. Because of that,
Right,
they came in there and they regulated.
So suppose, right, these hemp bills pass, right? What's the what are we looking at? Like, what's gonna happen, right?
So the bill gets on. So Gary, why don't you explain how the committee process works? So these bills, you have a House version,
Yeah.
and it's assigned to a number of committees, and you
Yes.
have a Senate bill version that's assigned into each of these committees, and
Mhm.
then those bills are then reconciled and combined, and then both chambers vote on the unified reconciliation of both of those bills, one of which would have a strike all. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll tell you that. Yeah, that's basically the way it goes. Because you start out that a lobbyist or some other entity, supposedly a citizen during legislative delegations, but that doesn't actually happen as much as it should happen, bring this idea of a bill to a legislator. And they go ahead and work with their aides to go ahead and polish it, and they put it into bring it to committee meetings so that it can go ahead and get filed and put together and hopefully set up for success in committee.
Sorry to interrupt, Gary, but I'm just gonna real quick ask you: is there any way that we can figure out who lobbied for what?
Yes, if you go to one site called Online Sunshine, rather, it'll tell you who is paying what lobbyists for what.
Oh,
now it won't tell you the exact bills, but if you see that a particular, say for instance, MMTC happens to be giving a certain amount of money to a certain politician who filed a certain bill, you could probably connect the dots if you wanted to, if you knew that they were paying a lobbyist to put that bill forward in front of that legislator.
Not always.
Not always, because some people go under assumed names. There's always devious ways to get around everything, especially if you want to be non-competitive and you want to be stealthy and you don't want to be transparent and you want to be somebody who has more than 100 dispensaries. Oh, did I say something like that? I'm sorry.
So
I didn't mean that.
Well, you're catching what I'm putting down here.
I am catching what you're putting down.
Can we figure out?
It's making me scratch.
Can we figure out if these MMTCs for sure put money in the hands of some lobbyists that push for these bills?
Well, it's interesting that there's a bill that kind of came out in Arizona, very, very similar to that, only it was written specifically for Arizona law.
Mm-hmm.
But you never guess who filed that one. And this one you can look up and verify. But it was a multi-state organization. It started in Florida.
What was the name of it?
I can't say it out loud because
it's public knowledge.
What does it rhyme with?
Bill in Arizona, right? Like
it rhymes with Boo Reeve.
How
about that?
So I'm not.
If Boo Reeve was a word,
I'm not following.
Well, I'd love to be more specific, but if anybody tries to press me on it, I'll have to give them an insertive request. Okay, and I'll explain what an insertive request means later on. It's another way of saying.
Here's something. Here, I'll tell you this. Gary. On another note, these companies, I don't think they understand the backlash that's coming. You're talking about thousands of millionaires, right? Yeah. You're talking about these people aren't broke. We're not broke in the hemp industry. We're not subject to IRS code 280E, right? We get to write things off.
And eventually Adam Behrman will run out of money.
We get to make investments. And a lot of these people, a lot of them are minorities. A lot of them come from different countries. You have a lot of Indian business owners. You have a lot of Palestinian business owners, Arab business owners. And, you don't want to be on the wrong side of those people. You know, money in this industry. Absolutely. You don't want to be on the wrong side of small mom and pop business owners. Now, this is why I think there's a good chance that DeSantis could save the day and not sign this, because a lot of these business owners pay taxes. And I know you guys might not like this fact, but the reality is a lot of these business owners are Republican and they vote Republican.
I don't care if a business is Republican. I would be more than happy to give my money to a Republican businessman, provided he's not, like whipping puppies in the backyard.
I have no problem with Republicans that aren't bought out.
Right, and this is an opportunity to
believe in free market.
My parents were actually Jews for Reagan. I mean, I was so ashamed at the time that I went and became a young Republican when I was in college, just to see how bad I would feel about myself.
So are my grandparents too.
And then we got Carlos's family, who's somewhat on the conservative side. Would you say that, Carlos?
They're very conservative.
All right. So
Absolutely.
I'd be honest with you, I'm an independent, and I do that for a very
Scared
specific reason.
shitless of communism.
I wouldn't. I've heard rumblings, and I can't confirm this, but from pretty reputable sources that there could potentially be a nationwide boycott with tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars behind it.
Well,
And I think when you do the math as a business person
Yeah.
and you look at the opportunity cost and then what would the blowback be, I don't think that goes into their calculus of that.
I think that would be very attractive to all these hemp entrepreneurs.
now, would you say it is similar to the
to
nature
support
of
that.
the mindset of hedge managers, where basically they go in there, they take over a company that's failing, and rather than standing it back up and making sure that everybody who is in that company is compensated, what they do is they collapse that company and sell off the assets, so that the money people get the money, and the people who actually work there or who were legacy owners of there are the losers.
So what that was called in the 80s, they called that a corporate raider, right? So Carl Icahn, the great Carl Icahn, they made a movie about him, loosely based on him, in 1986 called Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, Wall Street.
Yeah.
And in that movie, the character played by Michael Douglas,
Greed is good.
right? The phenomenal speech, greed is good, improves efficiency. Now that was based on Carl Icahn, that individual, right? With what they call it now is the investor or shareholder activism, right? They're called investor activists. They're not called corporate raiders. And one could argue that they're kind of like the bottom scrubbers. They provide efficiency into the marketplace. So, for example, if you had a cannabis company that had an application tied to it, but the application was making more money, sometimes the individuals or the management teams that are managing that, they might not realize, because of their individual interests, that company would be better off if they sold it. Case in point, eBay. Carl Icahn forced eBay to sell PayPal, and everybody got rich. So it's not always a bad thing. But bringing it back to cannabis, when you have a cannabis company, a lot of times the interests aren't aligned with the shareholders, the employees, and the customers. The interests aren't aligned, right? So one business model that did phenomenally well, I think, is Publix, right? So every employee has an ownership mentality in that company. Everybody has a little bit of share. You see, they're making, I don't know what they're making, 12, 15 bucks an hour, but they take pride in their work, right?
Which is the opposite way they do it in the original communist set up countries or Marxist countries, which basically says that the workers control the means of production, but they don't necessarily control the retail. That's another thing altogether. But the point is that if you have a country, and this is one of the reasons that communist countries didn't do as well as they should have, when the workers don't really have any input into their thing. All they have to do is meet their quota and then go home. There's no incentive to do better. There's no incentive to grow and to expand, and they don't profit anything from working harder. Then things start to collapse.
Right. And
Exactly what happened.
a lot of times what happens is as companies grow, you have these entrenched bureaucracies where the interest of that bureaucracy um, will trump the interests of the entire organization. So, for example, as companies grow, they become more inefficient, right? We got to run everything by legal. We have to run everything by compliance. And by the time things can get done, your competitors that are more agile have lapped you, right? It's akin to a giant cruise ship that's like, oh no, the hemp industry's going to hurt us. Let's turn the boat around.
That's how cruise ships talk.
Yeah,
They do,
yeah,
but
yeah,
they
exactly.
turn around very slowly, so
Yeah.
they have this Mitch McConnell kind of vibe to them.
Right. And meanwhile, the hemp industry is like a bunch of jet skis and U-boats just popping up, moving around, being more agile, more efficient in the marketplace, giving consumers what they want when they want at a really good price. And it's better for manufacturers like us, retailers like yourself. Good for the state revenue, the sales tax, the jobs that come with that, the mortgages. And I can't stress enough on these two specific bills. I'll name them again for people that are watching. That's House Bill 1475 and Senate Bill 1676. If those pass, that they'll have a massive negative economic impact on this state, and we're going into a serious recession. I know they keep saying, "Oh, the recession's 6 months away," but it's eerily similar to 2008. And a lot of people who are probably watching right now, they weren't even an adult then. They don't know what it's like to go through a recession. And I think this one could be really nasty.
There's a couple things this thing does. It adds more regulations. It literally destroys the whole concept of being able to have Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10 gummies. Because if you go with wet weight and things of that sort, the formula doesn't work. They went from percentage to weight. And so therefore, if you block the weight, therefore you can't sell any of that stuff anymore. So we're going to have to, anybody who manufactures it in the state, if they can, will ship it out of state. And no one will make any profit on it in this particular state. This is an anti-Florida bill.
I'll tell you what, if they pass this bill, I'm going to go to Texas. I'm going to move our manufacturing to Texas, and I'm going to take our list that we have here in Florida, the same data sets that we used to grow one of the largest MSOs in the country and one of the largest medical offices in the country at the time, right? I'm going to use that list, and I'm going to run advertising and say, hey, you don't need a card anymore, right? Out of spite. I'll do it. And that'll...
And to my numerous friends who were involved in the various normal chapters in Texas, who worked very, very hard towards legalization, and so far have been stymied at every turn, and they have a 2-year session situation going on. So it's always a long game for them at all point in time. They still only have CBD at this point in time. But this thing, if it goes over to Texas, like it's already going over to Arizona, and going to at least 7 other states that I know of, where this bill has been filed, we'll see a massive amount of turn down on the hemp industry, a massive upturn in the black market, legacy market, standard market, what you want to call it, and therefore a lot of unregulated product on the market. I'm not saying that everything that comes out of the legacy market is bad. A lot of people give a damn about the product that they put out. They want return customers. They want to be able to build a brand. You don't do that by putting out boof and crap. But if you don't care about your customers, that's what happens.
We've launched numerous, my marketing company, we've launched numerous brands here in the state of Florida and across the United States. And I can tell you that quality is one of the most important things. It's very hard to get a new customer. It's hard to keep them, but it's so easy to lose them. So you have to be absolutely obsessive over the quality. Now, in a limited marketplace, you don't really have to worry about that. You know, it's like, Verizon, tough luck, buddy.
This is a quality chocolate bar. I tried this, surreptitiously. I thought it was a hamburger accidentally, and I bought it. I got a piece of it, but I was so impressed with the fact that I'm a chocoholic kind of thing, and I can tell you whether it's German chocolate, Swiss chocolate, or Pepperidge Farm, or the crap that comes out of
I had the
New York State
dark chocolate the other day, and like an hour and a half later, I looked up and I was like, "Why the fuck am I so high?"
I often,
happy to hear that.
I often also ask myself about that all the time.
So would you guys like
this
some
is
chocolate?
Not supposed to make me that high.
Not yet.
Okay.
I'll take some.
Some federally legal THC chocolate.
There you go.
Available exclusively in Ybor.
For now. But this bill also goes things one step further, because we're kind of running out of time.
For a limited time until
But the way that it discusses the procedure of the extracting and things of that sort, they could literally make anything that involves increasing the concentrate of any cannabinoid into their product illegal, because it automatically gets stamped with that synthetic cannabis marker, which is not true. They're conflating the incorrect definition to the product.
All right, so
you're going to see CBD products fail, not just the Delta 8, not just the Delta 9, Delta 10, even CBG, CBN products that have been extracted, increase in concentration, and put back into the product so that you can have more of that particular cannabinoid or terpene that you need for your healing. This is an industry that was especially intended to help save people, help people in regards to their health and things of that sort. And there are a lot of companies that don't have that lofty of an objective. Their objective is strictly profit, in the hopes that their product, once it reaches their market, will improve their lives or not.
So
this is different.
We've spent quite a bit of time talking about these bills,
and we only talked about these two.
How can we stop this from happening? Is that the only thing? Just appealing to DeSantis? Maybe he'll have mercy and not sign it. Is that the only way that we can go about this? Is there any way that we can actually stop these bills?
Appealing to DeSantis is good. It may require blood sacrifice.
if you're, I'll tell you what to do. If you're a business owner, have your bags packed, ready to go, like you're a firefighter at a
Yeah.
moment's notice. With it, because what's going to happen is they're going to announce the meeting times and
Yeah.
when you can speak. Is that right, Gary?
Yeah.
And you want to have everything ready, your bag ready to go, and head to Tallahassee and let them know how this will affect you economically. Let them know the economic ramifications. That's what how it's going to affect the state budget, how it's going to affect the sales tax, and then the jobs as well. That's what is going to let them know. You want to go ahead and contact both the senator that sponsored the legislation and the state representative.
I mean, is that where the only place that we're at right now? Should patients go up that need need an alternative to the expensive MMTC prices? Like, there are people that use hemp in the state that are very, very sick that could make a good influence on this argument.
Exactly.
Because they can't get the card.
Right. It's like $500 a year
Yeah.
to be able to have a product that is federally illegal. Whereas you can walk into a shop like this and buy a product that's federally legal and not have to, be in a state medical system, right? There's a lot of veterans that I know that benefit from hemp products. And for whatever reason, I have my medical card and my concealed carry, and a lot of people do. Nikki Fried does, and so do a lot of people. A lot of veterans, there's this false rumor that you can't have both. You actually can, but there is an ATF form when you buy a firearm that asks you if you're a current user or have been addicted to something to that effect. And
An illicit drug.
and you're, some attorneys would argue you're not committing perjury if you didn't do it in a few days or what have you. That's their legal opinion. But if you're using hemp products, that's not even has nothing to do with that ATF question when you're buying a firearm. So that's an advantage right there. I think a lot of the companies, they're pissed because the hemp industry doesn't have to play by the same rules.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of like I embrace it because it's free market. This chocolate tastes like freedom. That's what it tastes like.
I don't understand why there would be such a beef with the hemp industry. I mean, they essentially, like, a lot of like Chillum here plays by the rules, and I mean, we're 21 and up. We don't sell to kids. We every single one of our products is subject to a lab test.
Well, funny you should mention that. 'Cause
Like, literally, it has to be on the packaging.
absolutely.
You gotta have a QR code.
Florida Department of Agriculture has come in here plenty of times and pulled product off the shelf that they've suspected to be harmful and whatnot. This whole thing about THCO that everybody's freaking out about now, I'm not worried about it because the Florida Department of Agriculture came in about a year ago and took THCO off of my shelf.
Now, this is not everybody, but there are certain people who believe that the more regulations you put out there, the more scofflaws will pop out, and they'll destroy themselves in public, and therefore they can take the industry down that way. They don't expect us to follow the rules, no matter what kind of rules they put on there. And when you follow the rules, they're going to up the bar. They're going to put more rules on there that you hate, like the current limit in regards to how much flour you can buy over a span of a month. Try to find something else to make you go ahead and step up and do something illegal.
You could buy some hemp THCA flour.
My point, though, Gary, is that the hemp industry here is not subject to much of the same regulations that the fucking cannabis industry is subject to. I mean, with the exception of having to check somebody's ID card. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we go through that we there's a lot of stuff that we have to comply with in order to make sure that we provide quality. That was all done a long time ago by Nikki Fried.
I will say this, that the Florida Department of Agriculture has been very helpful when it came to developing our products. Yeah. We've saved tens of thousands of dollars by having revisions of labels and going back and forth, and they've been helping us understand what's okay, what's acceptable, what's not. We've even asked about our future plans, and they've helped us with that. So they've been a phenomenal resource. The laws are already in the books for them to enforce. Yeah. And there are bad actors. And a lot of people, like ourselves as a manufacturer and yourself as a retailer, we self-regulate a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, like on our chocolates, we put the pieces in 5 milligram pieces, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of states put requirements on 10 milligram. And the litmus test on that is, would I give my mom that and be able to sleep at night? Yeah, I can give her 5 milligrams.
What's interesting is your chocolate per piece is actually less potent than the MMTC chocolates.
Right, and more delicious.
Yeah, and tastier.
Absolutely. So, you have that aspect of it. and they have the Florida Department of Agriculture has full enforcement on that. Now, the question is, do they have the resources to do that? That's another question.
That's why
But
they should be going after the manufacturers instead of the retailers.
right, and I support regulations to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of this entire industry. And we've kind of looked at other states, and we kind of went above and beyond that, where we require 21 and up labels. We put that on there. We have mostly black and white packaging. We made it, modeled it a lot off the experience I had working in MSOs, and even our manufacturing facility is treated like a laboratory. Not only do we stick to the health practices of the state, but also of the Florida Department of Health, in case if we were to ever be acquired or anything like that. That way, it can just be like flip of a switch.
I hear you look cute in a bunny suit. I'm just saying.
Gary, yeah, like
That's the question that must be answered. Do you think you look cute in a bunny suit?
What is going on right now?
All right, now here's the deal. We've been bitching and complaining for like the last hour, which is fine because I really enjoyed it. But the fact is, we need to have a solution. We can't just give you a problem because we would be amiss. And so, what can we do? Well, first off, we need to go ahead and contact the people who actually wrote this bill with their staff and who intend on moving it forward. And that would be Colleen Burton in the Senate and Will Robinson, danger, coming from the House side. And both of them are high up in their committees that can easily get it into those committees at first and have it pulled along. We need to contact them. You need to also contact your own particular legislator. And I don't mean just send them an email because they get tons of email that they just hit erase at the end of the day and don't even bother.
Respectfully.
Yeah.
Keyword respectfully. Respect goes a long ways.
Yes.
We've had instances where we flooded politicians' pages with thousands of comments from our followers in the past. And
how'd that work out for you?
It worked out great, actually. Some of that, but my point is that respect goes a really long way. And I think if you not only talk to your local representative, but the heads of the committee members, you'll probably see there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes right now. So this could potentially die. But a lot of times what will happen is the lawmakers will say, oh, yeah, don't worry. It's not going to pass committee. You're fine, to get your guard off. And then at the 11th hour, we changed our mind.
And also, don't forget, a lot of these culture war things are made to divert you away from these things that are happening in the background, which don't get as much press, but can have a huge amount of impact, far more than worrying about whether or not our 4-year-olds are getting critical race theory. I mean, that really is of no consequence. This is. So there's a couple of things we need to do. We need to make certain that we get rid of HB 1475 and its Senate companion. To do that, I would suggest you educate yourself on the bill. Go to Google, take a look at Florida 2023 legislative session, HB 1475, and read the bill, especially the things that are underlined. If you go ahead and pull up the text, and if they have a summary available there, go ahead and check out the summary because a lot of times it does explain things in plain English. And you can go and know exactly what's in this bill so that when you talk to any of your legislators or your legislators or the people who are actually directly involved with that, then you'll be able to talk with them on an intelligent level and educate them because they need an education as to how it will affect you.
Respectfully.
Kano, you're an hour late, man.
Well, you all were having such an amazing discussion. I didn't want to interrupt it.
You got anything to say about this bill? I mean, it's the end of the show.
Benjamin Franklin took your hour away, and you just went with it.
He's a time traveler.
There you go.
Short. Yeah, I have my comments on the bill. Plain and simple, the bill is unscientific. It is not grounded in any respectable public policy. This bill is plain and simple essentially a backdooring of creating a regulatory problem that they're trying to make a legislative problem. And I have no respect for the folks that are pushing this because this is essentially a way for very large businesses in Florida to utilize their wealth and political influence to run out several thousand small businesses, which are doing a much better job than they are at providing quality products to the consumers who want them. And that's all I have to say about that.
But another bill that came out this last week, which actually made it through its first committee, was one that came from Representative Spencer Roche, which does allow cannabis certified physicians to be able to do sort of recertification via telehealth. Not the first examination, of course, but subsequent ones, so that.
You said Spencer Roach, Gary. So
Yeah, I did.
the same
This is the
Spencer
same guy
Roach
who did it. This is the
that
same
put
guy who did it.
THC caps.
He did the THC cap. He has
And
learned.
now he's for us helping with telehealth. That just goes to show you that politicians ain't shit.
Well, he actually has evolved on a number of reasons. But one, he found out how much money there was in the actual industry and not against the industry.
Can I just add that somebody from Tallahassee, a pretty reputable source, told me that when those 10% THC cap bills came into be, that those were pushed by an MSO to distract everyone.
Yeah.
So the entire cannabis advocacy community would be focused on the 10% THC cap to distract them.
And they did. They took the bait.
And they took the bait. Absolutely.
So you have to watch out. What is the actual meaning behind the bill?
I remember those that certain people from MSOs trying to influence activists to get up to Tallahassee to talk about the 10% bills caps.
So in the meantime, other things kind of get slid in the background, which are more advantageous towards their businesses and less towards access of quality products to our patients, which is basically what we're all basically seeking. Now, the reason I mentioned Roach's bill is because it did pass first committee. Of course, it wasn't an issue for him because he's practically on that committee. But the fact is, he got to move forward. At the end, he also amended it to also make it a punitive bill. So if any certified doctors break the rules in any way, shape, or form, they can be put in front of the Board of Medicine and lose their license for 2 years. Now, that's because there wasn't enough punitive measures in the bill already. They had to throw one else in there. So if you're getting a good bill, why not fuck it up and put a punitive measure in there? That is just the way the legislature works. I get worked up about it, but the fact is that is the way it works. But we can take this to our advantage. If this is a bill that involves cannabis that is moving forward and it does something positive, like having telehealth for recertifications, we can take any of our bills that either did not make committee or did not get filed and attach them to that bill and move them forward. When we know that if this is a priority of theirs, we can put some good into that bill.
Now, is there a Senate companion bill for this bill as well?
Yes.
Now, do you think that this bill could also be a distraction for the kill hemp bill?
That is also a possibility. The fact is, it is going through and it will most likely pass. I think if they're saying, "Oh, give them a small win," okay, and I'll be happy that they still don't have home grow, they still don't have reciprocity. You can still be taken off of the transplant list if you have a medical card. You can still be denied employment because you have a medical card, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the things that we're fighting against right now because we want to improve the program. I think the patients and the people of the state of Florida deserve to have a better program than they have right now. And the legislature has a chance to make it better, but instead they're looking to find ways to make a negative impact. And I think we're pretty much fed up with that. And I think we need to go ahead and tell them that and what exactly the amount of the effect, both intended and unintended, is going to happen if they go along with what they're going to say and what they're going to do, especially when the black market, legacy market, standard market, traditional market takes over Florida again.
I mean, with the current regulatory environment, it is a thriving field for cartels, even criminal enterprises from other countries like China to come in and take foot. And I think if they further solidify that monopoly, we're going to see even more so.
Have you seen some of the branding of these illegal cannabis operations?
Oh yeah, some of them
they're more professional than the MSOs at this point.
Well, a lot of that has to do with passion.
Yeah,
a passion. And a lot of MSOs, they really, and this kind of is akin to why some of them fail or aren't able to make a profit. One of the many reasons is you'll hire someone who's from the corporate CPG world who has very little to any experience in the cannabis space, and they don't understand the consumer. They don't understand the culture. So when you see the branding, the content, the products that come out, it's very top down, and it doesn't really resonate with the community. Whereas a lot of the pop-ups and traditional markets, phenomenal products, right? Let's not lie, right? It's absolutely phenomenal products, and the passionate growers, some of the best growers they've seen. I've known so many cultivars that have been burned by big companies, and they got the check, they got the bag and everything, but they're never going back. You could offer them, millions, and they still, out of principle, they're not going to do it. And I'm talking about a lot of companies on the West Coast, right? So
Well, let's
Well,
be
on
clear
that
about
note, we've gone pretty
I was
far. So
I just want to be clear about a couple things on that. Um, the legacy market uh, has a better pulse to what consumers are asking for. And I hear it all the time. I was talking to a patient yesterday who told me, that they're in South Florida, in Broward County, and that the places either are out of stock or they have subpar flour, subpar concentrates. The pre-rolls are rolled so tight you can't even pull it, you know. And these are coming from the two largest MSOs in the state and virtually the country. So, you have essentially a corrupt MSO that was built and birthed out of corruption right here at home in the state of Florida, and another one that was birthed out of the Russian mafia. And these are the two dominating forces in the market. It's no wonder that they can't put out quality products.
And we're not going to say who they are. Look it up. But the point is, we have talked to people who are close to the situation, and we've verified what we've said. Okay, this is not something coming out of conspiracy land. This is not something that I heard about from QAnon. Sorry, but the point is, we know it's true, and we also know that they're not the only one. Okay.
so
Well, on that note, Carlos, before we wrap up, let's just run the news segment so we can catch folks up on the latest, and then we'll close out.
boom.
That is so impressive. I literally, my pants don't fit anymore.
You
Well-
should have seen Mike's face. He was like, "Whoa, you can do that."
Well, folks should know that adult use marijuana legalization is advancing in 3 states. Currently, lawmakers in Hawaii have advanced Senate Bill 669 on Tuesday by a vote of 22-3. That bill will legalize marijuana use, production, and retail sale for adults. It's just awaiting action in the House. It could be uncertain. The House Speaker has expressed reluctance to move the bill forward this year, and kind of wanted to push it off for a summer study session, but we'll see how that moves. In Delaware, again, there's movement. House members voted 28-13 to support a House Bill 1, which removes all criminal and civil penalties for adults who possess personal use quantities of cannabis. And complementary legislation, House Bill 2, provides for the regulating of adult use cannabis retail market, is pending in that chamber. Last year, similar legislation, Senate Bill 1, was passed by lawmakers but vetoed by Governor John Carney, who does not believe that promoting or expanding recreational marijuana is in the best interest of Delaware. And of course, he said, especially our young people. They always go back to we got to save the children. And then finally, in Minnesota, they've advanced 2 bills for adult use cannabis that have passed multiple committees and are anticipated to receive floor votes this week. And in the state of Maryland, they passed their adult use amendment implementation bill through the House and is currently moving through the Senate. Any feedback, fellas?
Nice.
No, I mean it's nice to know that some things are positive, because, like I said, we had a hellacious week on a number of fronts. Not just to mention the passing of Raphael Mechoulam, but also industry wise and things of that sort. We could do better in Florida. The MSOs could do better for us in Florida. The MMTCs can do better for us in Florida. And if the free market works, then that means that you guys will thrive. Don't expect us to applaud you knocking somebody down. Expect us to applaud you doing things right for us. And we are 700,000 strong, which makes us bigger than you.
Well, Gary, don't get too excited. I know that was some positive news, but I had to start out with that because for those who don't know,
Here comes the shit show.
Well, the state of Oklahoma on Tuesday voted down adult use. And it voted it down significantly. 60% of voters voted no for adult use in Oklahoma. Some folks have given feedback that part of that is due to their medical industry flooding their market. And they're just, the opinions are that there really was no need for adult use. Because when you think about Oklahoma is 90% Native American reservation, you're really like that much landmass which is already flooded with a medical market. But also coming out of Oklahoma's U.S. Court for the Western District, A federal judge ruled that the 1968 law, which bans marijuana users from possessing firearms, was unconstitutional. And on Friday, the Justice Department has announced it's going to appeal that ruling in the U.S. Court of Appeals 10th Circuit Court. In 2016, a 3-judge panel from the 9th Circuit Court upheld the federal government's interpretation of the law, and justices opined that the ban furthers the government interest in preventing gun violence because marijuana users are more likely to be involved in violent crime. And to the Biden administration, I just like to say, as one Democrat to another, go fuck yourself.
In a nice way, of course.
No, I mean that in the worst possible, harshest way. Literally take your head, stick it up your ass, and fuck your own face, Joe Biden.
So you are making a multiple insertive request.
All right. So moving past that, I just want to kind of, you got to sandwich all the shit together. And here's one that really bothers me. According to data published in the Journal of Hospital Pediatrics, Black and Hispanic patients are disproportionately screened for prenatal cannabis use. And the fact is that this is something that, Gary, we've taken a lead on with our parental rights bill. We believe, again, that if your doctor determines that cannabis use is the best way for you to mitigate, the symptoms of pregnancy, then it should be something that is totally sanctioned and legal. Nonetheless, in some states such as Oklahoma and Alabama, mothers have been arrested and criminally prosecuted for the use of cannabis during their pregnancy. In total, 24 states and the District of Columbia consider substance abuse during pregnancy child abuse under the civil welfare statutes. And so we have to do better. We have to, make sure that we're pushing for that people's civil rights, and they're not losing their kids because of this, because of cannabis use.
Let's get this straight. There are there's several types of drug abuse where there's a nexus between child abuse and the abuse and the addiction of the parents. That is not the same thing with cannabis. For most of the instances, and when it comes to this, cannabis oftentimes makes parents better parents. They're dealing with less stress. They're able to take care of their kids better, and they're healthier, so they can do more with their kids.
Who would you rather watch your children over the weekend? An alcoholic or someone who smokes a little ganja on the weekend, doesn't drink any alcohol?
I mean, you got to think it makes you better at parenting, right? What's the most going to happen? You're going to pay more attention to the kid. You're going to be paranoid about pointy things around them, right? I mean, the fact is that
personally, I like my babysitter addicted to meth.
Personally, I'd like Michelle Yeoh to watch my kids. She would keep them in line.
Well, look, I do want to close this out on a high note, if you will. And a study coming out of the review of the expert review of clinical pharmacology, published data coming out of the United Kingdom that said cannabis products improve the health-related quality of life in patients with chronic illnesses. It helps with a variety of disorders, including chronic pain, anxiety, PTSD, depression, migraines, inflammatory bowel disease, among other afflictions. And that, when they consume cannabis by either marijuana flowers or ingest plant-derived extracts containing both THC and CBD, we're seeing symptoms, relieved. All in all, the science in our country is ass backwards because of politics. As long as cannabis use disorder exists as a psychological illness in the DSMV, then one, I have no respect for the field of psychology. And two, we have to continue to push, because there are so many ways in which people are being criminalized purposely using bad science. And we've seen it with the issues around pregnancy and cannabis use. We see it in the fact that 80% of people who are court ordered for rehab for cannabis, it's not like people are like, oh my God, I have such a smoking problem, I need to check myself into the Betty Ford clinic. Only people who do that are politicians who get caught smoking weed. And so, in the grand scheme of things, I have to say, like you said, Gary, for every step forward, there are 2 steps back, but we're willing to step up to the plate and to keep walking, keep fighting. And I really appreciate you guys doing your part in making this happen. To all the viewers and listeners out there, there is no magical billionaire that's going to come in and save us. It's going to take you, me, Gary, Carlos, Michael. It's going to take a slew of thousands, if not millions of individuals stepping up to the plate. And every little bit matters. That's why your $25 becoming a normal member, joining Suncoast Normal, goes a very long way. Anything you can donate, whether you can support our Patreon page and keep this broadcast going so we can continue to bring you educational material and great guests each and every week. Support what we're doing, become a member, make the rotation a reality, for the long term. But more than that, let's make legalization happen. And the only way you're going to do that is if you yourself get your ass up off the couch. And if you don't have the time, you can't roll up your sleeves and get it done, then, volunteer your treasure. Just $25, a few dollars donated on the Patreon page makes a big difference to us being able to accomplish our mission. And that's to legalize it for every responsible cannabis user.
And if you look on the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you see what is not Carlos's thumbprint, but is actually a QR code. And we've had both QR codes. You can go ahead and freeze the screen and take a look at it and scan it. One is to join our Patreon so we can make better and better videos and better podcasts and get in front of more and more people, and to join Suncoast Normal and to be part of the movement that's going to make things happen, that's going to make things better. And if you want to know what you can do, go to suncoast.org, normal.org, and ask us, what in the world can I do? And we in the world will tell you.
Cool. Well, bye, everybody.